Each year, countless individuals disappear from the face of the earth. Despite the help of family and friends, as well as the efforts of the police departments, some of these people are never found. Melissa Ann Montoya is a Native American woman from New Mexico. The 42-year-old enrolled as a member of the Jicarilla Apache Nation Reserve. In 2001, she was living with her boyfriend in a secluded area of Colorado and was working on a nearby ranch. According to members of her family, the two had been involved in a tense relationship, which resulted in Melissa being too afraid to leave him. It was for this reason that her family offered her a place to stay. She declined this offer though, saying that she didn't want to be a burden to them. On the 9th of March of that year, Melissa headed out to the Apache House of Liquor, where a St. Patrick's Day party was being held. The local pub had been nicknamed the Zoo, located at 13605 US Highway 64 in Dulce. At the party, she met up with her younger cousin, and the two spoke at length for at least an hour. It sounded as though Melissa was getting ready to end her relationship with her boyfriend. Later that evening, she caught up to one of her friends. The two began talking when they were approached by a man who's believed to be Melissa's boyfriend. They got into a brief argument and the woman demanded some space. An hour later, the man approached again, instructing her that it was time to go. She walked out of the bar with the man following closely behind, and after this, Melissa was never seen or heard from again. As soon as the investigation began, the boyfriend was the first to be interviewed. During his interrogation, he claimed he wasn't at the bar that evening, but witnesses claimed to have seen him there. The man concluded that he knew nothing about his girlfriend's disappearance, and due to the lack of evidence, he couldn't be tied to any crime. Not long after, he passed away, and his Colorado home was found to have been burned. The authorities searched through what was left of the property but found no evidence of Melissa there. Within a month of her disappearance, the Jicarilla Apache Nation Police Department began to investigate the event as well, along with the BIA. The case saw slow movement though, and very little progress. It was as though the woman had fallen from the face of the earth. Earlier this year, attorney and friend of the missing woman, Darlene Gomez, received an email referring to remains that had been found in Dulce. The remains had actually been found 4 years prior and tested positive as female, but improved technology found that they were actually the remains of a Native American male. This meant that family, friends, and the community still had no answers about the missing woman. The raised hope was flushed out, and Melissa remained missing. Darlene has spent the last 2 decades fighting for answers in this case, but to no avail. The big smile and sweet nature of the missing woman continued to haunt the community, and family and friends described Melissa as being fierce, strong, and independent. At the time of her disappearance, she had black hair and brown eyes. She's said to be 5 feet and 7 inches tall, weighing around 155 pounds. According to the missing person database, Melissa is believed to have been wearing contact lenses, blue jeans, and brown boots when she vanished. Any information regarding the whereabouts of this missing woman should be directed to the Jicarilla Apache Nation Police at 575-759-3222. 33-year-old Minnie Taylor is originally from Haynesville, Louisiana. She's known to most as Yvette, favoring her middle name. In 1999, she moved to El Dorado, Arkansas with her boyfriend and daughter. Due to life struggles, Minnie sent her daughter to live with her grandmother in Spring Hill, Louisiana, and then with her other grandmother in Haynesville. Minnie and her boyfriend were living in a duplex on School Street. The home was just 2 blocks away from Easy Mart, the location where she would last be seen. It was on the 26th of May in 2002 when Minnie was seen at the Easy Mart convenience store in the 400 block of West Hillsborough Street. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance remain unclear. No one knows if she left the area on foot or by vehicle. All that's certain is that the mother hasn't been seen or heard from since. Days later, a friend reported Minnie missing to the El Dorado Police Department, who stated that there was very little to go on with regard to the suspicious disappearance. They interviewed anyone and everyone that she knew, but found no key information or any new leads that would lead to her whereabouts. But strangely though, Minnie isn't the only one who's gone missing in the same area. Just 1 year later, a woman named Cynthia Robinson disappeared from El Dorado. Both women are said to be of a similar build and were known to frequent the same area prior to their disappearances. It's uncertain if these missing person cases are related or not, but neither of them has been solved. Investigators believe that the woman may have met with foul play, but no concrete evidence has been produced to confirm or deny this suggestion. No persons of interest have been named either, leaving her case unsolved. Minnie's daughter graduated from high school in 2014 and still regularly checks in with the El Dorado police for any updates on her mother's case, but there still haven't been any. The disappearance was also brought up on Reddit in a subreddit called Grateful Doe. One user submitted an image of Minnie Taylor alongside a 2002 Pulaski County Jane Doe, but there was no match between the two, and she was ruled out as a possible identification for the unidentified victim. Minnie Taylor has been described as an African-American woman with black hair and brown eyes. At the time she went missing, she stood at a height of 5 feet 3 inches tall, weighing between 120 and 150 pounds. The only distinguishing characteristics listed in the case are the scars she has on both arms. At the time she went missing, Minnie was 27 years old and would now be 49. It isn't known what the missing woman was wearing at the time that she went missing. Any information regarding this case can be directed to the El Dorado Police Department at 870-881-4810. The missing person case of Robert Wayne Connor remains one of the most frustrating disappearances in Claremont, North Carolina. 62-year-old Robert was living alone on a 200-acre property near US 70 East in Claremont. He was described as a very dependable individual, and according to family and friends, it was uncharacteristic of him to just vanish. On the night of the 18th of July, 2003, Robert was seen at the Boxcar Grill restaurant located on North Oxford Street. He'd been seen at the bar, but no one knew where he'd gone after this. 6 days later, the man's daughter was forced to report her father missing to the Catawba County Sheriff's Office when she was unable to make contact with him. An investigation was carried out, revealing an eerie atmosphere to the entire case. At Robert's home in the 4100 block of Highway 70, police found his vehicle in beloved Datsun named Rusty. The truck, though, had been parked in a strange place, and Rusty appeared hungry and frantic. The atmosphere wasn't helped when Robert's daughter found uncollected mail jutting out of the mailbox. They also discovered 14 unanswered messages on the answering machine, and his firearm, a .357 Magnum, was missing. The scene instilled a sense of uneasiness. Everything at the house was uncharacteristic. According to the Hickory Daily Record, the daughter explained that she believed her father had met with foul play, and that if he had been, there was a creek nearby that he could have hidden in. The creek that the woman was referring to was Lyle Creek, which was also thoroughly searched when Robert was reported missing, along with Connor Park and the surrounding areas. Despite the best search efforts, no clues were unearthed directing police to the man's whereabouts. 3 years later, though, they received an unexpected tip. This tip led them to a pond 3 miles from Robert's house and near Bunker Hill School. They searched the pond there but found nothing. The same year, the detectives involved in the investigation interviewed the last person to have seen the man prior to his vanishing, John Franklin Dixon. But nothing came of this interview, and no new crucial leads presented themselves. Robert was simply gone, his home disarranged, his dog alone, and no clues as to his whereabouts ever arose, declaring this missing person case the most frustrating in Claremont. Despite having no concrete evidence, police officers too believed that the man met with foul play. Robert's case was posted on the Facebook page of the Missing Person Cases Network and gained attention on Reddit. Many Reddit users who live or previously lived in the area pointed out possible areas where Robert could have ended up, including Little Mountain, situated near his home. Robert Connor is described as a Caucasian male who stands at a height of 6 feet and weighs around 210 pounds. At the time he went missing, he had gray, balding hair and a full beard. His eye color, though, has gone unspecified. Robert's casual wear includes a white t-shirt, overalls, and a hat. He was also known to wear a gold chain necklace with a gold nugget, a silver Timex, and a Citizen brand watch. any information regarding the whereabouts of this missing man should be directed to the Catawba County Sheriff's Office at 828-465-8301. Margaret Haddican McEnroe was born on the 25th of August 1977 to Terry Deal in Livingston, Illinois. Her mother gave her up for adoption, and she found herself taken in by Aileen and Patrick Haddican. Margaret grew up to be the oldest of 4 adopted children in New Jersey. She later enlisted in the Army and completed her basic training at Fort Jackson in 2001. For another 2 years, she was stationed in the Army as a mechanic in Fort Riley, Kansas. During this time, she found her birth mother, and the two enjoyed a close relationship. In 1999, she was awarded a Valor Award as a volunteer firefighter for her rescue efforts in Bound Brook during Hurricane Floyd. In 2004, Margaret was discharged and ended up marrying her longtime friend, Timothy McEnroe. The couple had 2 children together, with an added daughter from a prior relationship. Margaret was living an eventful life. She was named a hero and was establishing a family of her own. Unfortunately, this progression would come to an abrupt end when she disappeared. It was the 9th of October 2006 when she and her husband found themselves engaged in a heated argument. This led to a report of domestic disturbance, but by the time the police arrived, Margaret had left for her parents' home. Later that evening, she returned to her residence in the Witchwood Way and Round Top Road areas of Warren Township, New Jersey. The following day, Margaret spoke with her best friend on a phone call between 8:30 and 9 that morning. After 1 p.m. that afternoon, Timothy left their home to go get some baby formula. He returned around 3 p.m. only to find that Margaret was gone. Their baby was still in her crib alone. Margaret didn't return that day, and she hasn't been seen or heard from since. 2 days later, Timothy alerted the Warren Township Police Department that his wife was missing, and not long after, an investigation ensued. It was found that she'd left her SUV behind, along with her cell phone, which had been broken during the previous night's argument. Timothy also reported that a bag topped with $11,000 worth of cash had also disappeared. Police searched the house but found no evidence of damage to the home. It didn't appear that Margaret had been forcibly removed or any signs of a struggle. Police discovered that her credit card was missing, but there was no activity on the account. The case grew cold, with no conclusive evidence arising. It was not until 6 weeks later that the police had a break in the case. It was Thanksgiving Day when a Warren police officer discovered an Army t-shirt on Dockwatch Hollow Road, just 1 mile from Margaret's home. The shirt was sent for analysis, but no crucial data came back. It was noted, though, that the shirt hadn't been weathered and showed no signs of being subjected to the elements. It was also determined that Margaret would often walk out of the home and return later on when she calmed down. But this time, though, she never came back. Police found no evidence of foul play in the disappearance, but family and friends don't believe that she would leave without telling anyone, and she certainly wouldn't leave her children behind. Margaret Haddican McEnroe was 29 years old when she vanished. At the time, she was wearing her black BDU jacket, a gray US Navy sweatshirt, white checked pajama pants, socks, and white Nike tennis shoes. Margaret has been described as a Caucasian female with brown hair and brown eyes. At the time she went missing, she stood at a height of 5 feet and 2 inches tall and weighed around 110 pounds. Any information should be directed to the Somerset County Prosecutor's Office at 908-231-7100. Philistin Saintcyr was born on the 20th of October in 1939 in Haiti. He lived for most of his life in Orlando, Florida. The 66-year-old had landed a job at a packing plant at Disney. He moved to Immokalee to be closer to the packing plant, where he would work for many years. 6 months after moving to the area, though, Philistin would mysteriously vanish. On the 26th of April in 2006, Philistin was taken to the NCH North Naples Hospital via air ambulance. The medical emergency, though, has gone unspecified, but his son, Colbert, did note that his father suffers from high blood pressure. The next morning, Philistin was released and he was given a cab voucher so that he could make it back home, which was 40 miles away. He hopped in the cab and they headed for Immokalee. Philistin couldn't speak English, and when they arrived in the area, he was unable to tell the cab driver where he lived. This prompted the driver to take him back to the hospital. The staff then directed him to a bus, which they said would take him home, but he never arrived there. Philistin was last seen at the bus stop on the 300 block of 7th Street North, but he was never seen or heard from again after this. The family was unable to make contact with the 66-year-old and subsequently reported him missing to the Collier County Sheriff's Department. Detectives suggested that he'd wandered off somewhere that day. He wasn't familiar with the area and may have been experiencing dementia. Philistin hadn't been diagnosed with dementia, though. This suggestion came from an incident report before his disappearance, explaining that he wasn't acting normal and that he may be an undiagnosed dementia victim. In May, the police received a tip. A witness claimed to have seen a man matching his description at the rail station in West Palm Beach. CCTV footage was retrieved from the station, and it appeared that the man who was seen in it was Philistin, but Colbert claimed that this was not his father. Colbert noted that his father often spoke about Haiti and how much he missed it, but he doesn't think that he would have gone back there. Philistin's DNA and dental records were later entered into the missing persons databases, but there's yet to be a match. Not much evidence has come about that could lead to the discovery of the missing man. Philistin Saintcyr has been described as an African American with black hair and brown eyes. He's only able to speak Haitian Creole and is known to be missing a few teeth. Philistin is said to be a height of 5 feet and 5 inches tall and weighs between 130 and 140 pounds. At the time he went missing, he was wearing a white and red striped shirt, green pants, black shoes, and a green ball cap. Any information regarding the circumstances surrounding this man's disappearance should be directed to the Collier County Sheriff's Department at 239-793-9300. Alternatively, tips can be directed to Crime Stoppers at 800-780-TIPS. Andrew Gray Chapman, referred to as Andy, was 32 years old when he was living on Whitethorn Avenue in the Hilltop neighborhood located west of Columbus, Ohio. He had 2 roommates living with him, and in November of 2006, the 3 found out that their home was going to be turned into the bank due to foreclosure. For unknown reasons, Andy decided to keep this bit of information to himself and didn't tell his family about it. Andy's life had started to take a turn just 1 year prior, when his wife filed for divorce and took their young son with her. A year before that, he was involved in a car accident, which would initiate a substance addiction. But after spending some time in rehabilitation centers, he was able to overcome these issues and establish his life in Ohio. Andy was in constant contact with his mother and grandmother until his unfortunate disappearance. On the 6th of December, he made contact with his mother, Judy, and was said to be in a state of panic. He said that he needed to see her immediately, but she was sick and wasn't able to get to his house right away. 2 days later, she arrived at the home but found that it was empty. On the 8th of December in 2006, Andy was last seen at the house by neighbors who said that the occupants had moved out. Andy's car was still parked there, but he was nowhere to be found. He wasn't reported missing until a month later, in January of 2007. He missed a court date, alerting his family that something was wrong. But the following year, authorities closed the case without telling the family, on the assumption that he was running from legal issues. This mishandling may have been a crucial aspect of the entire missing person case. In 2013, it was reopened when investigators discovered that Andy's family hadn't heard from him at all. The missing man's sister, Amy, described her brother as a kind-hearted individual and a family man. Judy explained that her son was shy as a kid and enjoyed all kinds of sports, particularly baseball. Through some investigation, it was found that just a few months prior to the disappearance, Andy had requested money from his retirement fund. According to his family, he received a check amounting to $39,000. $14,000 of this amount was used to purchase a car, the same car that was left behind at the house. It was also this vehicle that had been transferred into a roommate's name without Andy's family even knowing it. Amy and Judy both believed that the disappearance had something to do with the car and the money that the man received. Suspicions grew, and investigators were unable to track down the rest of the money that Andy had taken out from his fund. The circumstances surrounding the disappearance are unclear, and Andy's whereabouts remain unknown. After all these years, the idea of foul play has begun to creep in. A reward of $4,800 is being offered to anyone who's seen Andy or who has information on where he may be. Andrew Chapman is described as a Caucasian male with brown hair and brown eyes. He stands at a height of 6 feet tall and weighs around 175 pounds. At the time he went missing, Andy wore eyeglasses and was sporting a mustache. It isn't certain what the man was wearing when he vanished, but he's known to wear large or extra large shirts and size 11 to 12 shoes. If anyone has information regarding the whereabouts of this missing person, they're asked to make contact with the Columbus Police Department at 614-645-4545. Lisa Lee Chandler was born in March of 1963. She would later become the mother of 2 boys and moved into a house located on the 5500 block of Highway 34 North in Wolf, Texas. She'd been living here for around 20 years. Unexpectedly, though, Lisa would disappear. It was around 5 p.m. on the 23rd of September in 2007 when the 44-year-old was last seen at her Wolf City home. That day, she'd spoken with her mother, Marie, on the phone, saying that she was feeling unwell. Lisa told her mother that she had a doctor's appointment the next morning, prior to heading out to her mother's home in Starks, Louisiana, 6 hours away. But the woman would never make it to her mother's house, nor did she attend her doctor's appointment later that day. Lisa was known to be more stressed than usual at this time, and had been going through a divorce, but it was uncharacteristic of her to just leave without warning. The next day, Marie attempted to make contact with her daughter but was unable to get through to her. In a worried state, she drove out to her house only to find Lisa's vehicle still in the driveway and her beloved dog running around the yard. Marie made her way toward the house and found that the doors were unlocked. The windows had been left open and the TV was on. A pack of cigarettes, glasses, and a purse belonging to the mother of 2 were left on the table. Marie opted to call the Hunt County Sheriff's Office that afternoon and reported her daughter missing. The police came through with sniffer dogs who were able to track the smell south of the Wolf City home. The scent led the search along the highway towards Greenville. This went on for 5 miles before abruptly stopping. At this point, handlers believed that Lisa had been picked up by a motorist because the scent would stop at a certain point. Ground and air search efforts were carried out in the 1,500 acres surrounding the woman's home, but no clues revealing her location were found. One person of interest was located, but it hasn't been confirmed whether any evidence has been tied to this individual. Marie explained that the 2 had been speaking on the phone almost the whole day, ending their call at 3 p.m. After no new clues emerged, she contacted a few of Lisa's friends, but none of them had seen her either. In the days following, the Hunt County Sheriff's Office made use of helicopter searches equipped with infrared heat detecting technology. These searches, though, proved futile. Sergeant Haynes suggested that the woman did not leave on her own accord that day and indicated that they needed the help of the community if they were to find the missing woman. The oldest son, Chris, who's in college, explained that the ordeal has been a roller coaster for both him and his brother. Lisa Chandler's case has been classified as endangered missing, and it remains unsolved. She's described as a Caucasian woman with brown hair and hazel eyes. She stands at a height of 5 feet and 6 inches tall and weighs around 110 pounds. Lisa has an obvious scar on her upper lip as well as on her shin. She also has a chickenpox scar beside her left eye. No one knows what she was wearing on the day she vanished, or what she may have taken with her. Any helpful information regarding this disappearance can be directed to the Hunt County Sheriff's Office at 903-453-6800. It was the 7th of April in 2008 when Jascie Kaywaykla, known to most as Hope, was heading to 38th and Cache Road in Lawton, Oklahoma. Her sister was dropping her off at the local Kmart for a job orientation. Later that day, another family member arrived at that same location to pick Jascie up, but she wasn't there. After a brief look around the area, it was concluded that Hope was missing. That morning was the last time that the woman had been seen. It's unknown if she did attend the orientation, or if she even made it into the store. Panic ensued when no one was able to get a hold of the 19-year-old, and she was subsequently reported missing to the Lawton police. Not much has been disclosed relating to the missing woman's life or her behavior at the time of the disappearance. ever since the event took place, there's been no update on the case. No crucial evidence was unearthed, and no clues pointed family, friends, or the authorities in the right direction. Since 2017, the family has been working closely with the Southwest Oklahoma chapter of MMIW in an effort to shed light on Hope's disappearance. DNA samples and fingerprint information have been submitted into the database, but no matches have since come about. On the 7th of April in 2022, everyone who knew the missing woman gathered together in honor of Hope. They do this each year to continue raising awareness and to keep interest in the case, in hopes that someone comes forward with information. Jascie Kaywaykla is a Native American woman, one among the hundreds who have disappeared. These disappearances have prompted the IDA bill, which was passed in 2022. The bill and a red alert system allow for an immediate alert to be issued when any Indigenous man, woman, or child disappears. She was born in 1988 with brown hair and brown eyes. She's said to stand at a height of 5'3", weighing around 115 to 125 pounds. Hope had also enrolled in the Comanche Nation. Any information that could lead to the whereabouts of Hope should be directed to the Lawton Police Department at 580-581-3240, with case number 2008-04257. Robert Merle Harrod, also referred to as Bob, was born in January of 1928. He would go on to marry Georgia, with whom he would have 3 daughters. In 2002, the family moved from Monrovia to Placentia, California. Following his wife's passing in 2008 due to a prolonged illness, Robert would reconnect with the woman he'd once been engaged to prior to the Korean War. Her name was Fontel Heater, and they separated when he joined the military. In June of 2009, the reconnected couple got married in Fullerton County Courthouse. The newlyweds were planning on moving to Robert's Placentia home in Orange County. At this time, he owned quite a few properties and other assets that were estimated to be worth around $5 million. But something unexpected would occur that ruined the couple's plans and ultimately left behind 3 daughters, a grandson, and 3 great-grandchildren. It was Robert's disappearance. On the 27th of July in 2009, he'd been at the 522 Carnation Drive residence where he and his son-in-law had been doing some repairs. The repairs were in preparation for the arrival of his new wife. Around 2:30 that afternoon, Robert's son-in-law headed off to Home Depot. He was going out to get some more supplies. He returned to the property just 1 hour later, only to find Robert's maid standing on the porch. She'd been waiting there for quite some time. The front door to the house had been locked, so the son-in-law and maid entered through the back. Upon entering, though, they were met with a deafening silence. Robert's presence had been replaced with an eerie atmosphere. He was gone. That night, after the man still hadn't shown up, the family contacted the police and reported that he was missing. At the time, Fontel had returned home to pack up some of her things in Missouri and was scheduled to arrive at Placentia 2 days later. Investigators searched the house and found that Robert's keys and wallet had vanished along with him, but he left behind a gold 1997 Toyota Camry as well as his reading glasses. There has since been no activity on his bank accounts or credit cards. Detectives found a few notes that were indicative that he was planning on putting his new wife's name on many of the accounts. Following his disappearance, a dispute would ensue between Fontel and Robert's daughters over the estate. In August of that year, 2 of the daughters announced a petition for conservatorship in an effort to gain control of their father's missing assets. This effort would be to free up some money so that a reward could be offered for any information that leads to the whereabouts of the missing man. As recently as 2019, 2 people were arrested in connection with the vanishing, but were released soon after due to a lack of evidence and a pending investigation. The family had initially suspected the barber of being involved, but the investigators couldn't substantiate these claims. Detectives found no evidence of foul play in the disappearance, and a $50,000 reward was put on the table for anyone who had any information on the vanishing or information that would lead to the arrest or conviction of the person responsible. At the time of his disappearance, Robert Merle Harrod was 81 years old. He's described as a Caucasian male whose hair is partially gray and has a balding top. He also has blue eyes, stood at a height of 5 feet and 11 inches, and weighed around 160 pounds. If anyone has any information regarding this disappearance, they're asked to make contact with the Placentia Police Department at 714-993-8168. 51-year-old Richard Strong met Darlene in the early 2000s. They were introduced through a friend and immediately hit it off. They got married in 2004, and things went so well that they decided to adopt a child together after a couple of years. But before the adoption process could even be completed, an unforeseen circumstance would arise. Richard disappeared. He and Darlene were living together in Kentucky. They'd last spoken around 3 in the afternoon on the 18th of February, 2011. Richard told his beloved wife that he was dropping a neighbor off at his house. Later that evening, the man would meet up with a group of friends at a campsite located on top of a strip mine near Highway 899 in Raven, Kentucky. According to witnesses, he'd gotten into an altercation with another person at the campsite, after which he walked off into the night. This would be the last known sighting of Richard. That same night, Darlene was met with a panicked face at the door of her home. The panicked individual explained that the woman's husband had been hurt, prompting Darlene to contact the authorities. It was during this phone call that she would alert them to the idea that her husband was missing. The ordeal was taken seriously, and a search was immediately launched. Police headed to the campgrounds, which by this point was smothered in fog, making it difficult to see anything at all. For this reason, the search was postponed. The next day, when the search for Richard Strong ensued, investigators discovered his truck. It was stopped on a hill past marker 9 on Highway 899, just a few miles from the site. It was never clarified what condition the vehicle was in. All that was certain was that Richard was nowhere near the truck. There were no signs of him, and investigators soon found that there was also no evidence that the man was there in the first place, aside from the testimonies of eyewitnesses. The lead detective at the time was Chris Collins with the Kentucky State Police. He interviewed everyone who was on the grounds that evening and discovered that Richard had been accused of stealing a wallet. This accusation would lead to the altercation that sent the man on his way, subsequently vanishing into the trees. Collins, though, didn't believe that he was given the full story of what had happened that evening. Each witness relayed the same story, some of which had seen the missing man go back to his car. The investigation into the man's disappearance grew colder and colder. There was little information that could lead to the man's discovery, and one by one, the campsite members began to pass away, taking the secret of what had happened that evening along with them. Darlene described this eventful night as purely awful, and she never gave up looking for her beloved husband. Richard Strong has been described as a Caucasian male with brown hair and blue eyes. At the time he went missing, Richard was just over 6 feet tall and weighed between 200 and 230 pounds. Distinguishing factors included iron rods that were placed in both his right leg and right arm. He also has a tattoo of a chihuahua with the name Tiffany beneath it on his arm. Any information that could lead to the whereabouts of Richard Strong should be directed to the Kentucky State Police, who can be reached at 606-435-6069. The family and friends of Michael Clausel have been searching for answers since he vanished without a trace in May of 2024. The nature of his disappearance left his family fearing for the worst, but the longer he remains missing, the stranger his case becomes. Michael was last seen on May 3rd of 2024. He was 45 years old at the time of his disappearance and lived on the north side of Columbus, Ohio. Work had taken him to Xenia, roughly an hour's drive from Columbus. So Michael had temporarily moved to Dayton to be closer. While staying in Dayton, Michael rented a car to get around. It was the rental company that first alerted Michael's family to his disappearance. Michael was due to return the car a few days after May 3rd. When he didn't show up, the company contacted Michael's family to ask about him. His family hadn't seen or heard from him in days and had no idea where Michael or the car were. On May 13th, one of these mysteries was solved. An Ohio Highway Patrol trooper located Michael's car wrecked at the side of East Enon Road, but Michael's location would remain a mystery. The police were able to determine the nature of the crash. The car had been traveling south on East Enon Road when it went through a stop sign. It struck a ditch, then ran through a fence and hit a tree before finally coming to a stop in a field. The initial search for Michael focused on the field and the surrounding area. The road where he went missing passed through farmland and the small town of Yellow Springs. Early appeals for information urged people to check their own fields and outbuildings for the missing man. ATVs, drones, and dogs were utilized in the searches. Michael's phone was located in his vehicle, and a pair of his shoes were found in a field, but Michael himself was nowhere to be found. Michael's family worried that he may have been hurt during the accident. Details from the accident scene haven't been made public, and it's not clear if there was any indication of a wound. But even if there was no obvious evidence at the scene, it could still be possible that Michael was hurt in the accident. He may have been confused and wandered away from the scene before the wounds became more serious. Michael's parents believe he would have contacted them if he was able to. It's rare that Michael ever went more than a week without talking to them, and he would have wanted his mother to know that he was okay after the accident. Early searches turned up no new information. There's been no update on this strange missing person case. Anyone with information on this case can contact Dayton Police at 937-333-1334. Gary Patterson was reported missing after he missed an appointment in December of 2024. By that point, he'd already been missing for 2 months. Another 2 months have passed without anybody seeing or hearing from him. According to Gary's brother Simon, he was a creature of routine. Gary lived in Larne, Northern Ireland, where he seemed to be happy. He had his routines and would go out for walks, visit the market to buy DVDs and CDs to add to his collection, and shop at the local Iceland store. Simon described his brother as being something of a loner. He knew a lot of people, but they could be considered acquaintances rather than friends. These were people he saw while out and about. Even though he likely would have seen the same people on a regular basis, it took 2 months for anybody to notice that he was absent. Gary was last seen on October 12, 2024. CCTV footage from his apartment captured him walking down the stairs. It didn't look as if he intended to be gone for any extended period of time and would likely be home by 4 p.m., as was his routine. But Gary never came home. Sometime after leaving his house, he visited an ATM at a nearby Tesco Express and withdrew 100 pounds. This was also normal for Gary. He preferred to pay in cash wherever he bought anything, and 100 pounds was a normal amount of money for him to withdraw to make these ordinary everyday purchases. Unfortunately, because Gary paid with cash, where he spent that money is a mystery. Investigators and search teams have no idea where Gary went after leaving the cash point. 2 months later, Gary had an appointment at Specsavers, but he never showed up. This was very unlike Gary, and the store staff were so concerned they contacted the authorities to check on him. The police found Gary's apartment empty, but there was no evidence that anything unusual had happened there. Everything was in its place, just as Gary would have left it on a typical day. It was then that Gary's brother Simon was contacted. Simon hadn't heard from his brother since he disappeared. Gary had a cell phone, but he rarely responded to calls and texts, and the two brothers didn't contact one another on a regular basis. He was shocked to discover Gary was missing and immediately joined the search to find his brother. Simon described Gary as vulnerable and someone who could get confused when he wasn't in a familiar setting. He also worried that someone may have lured his brother away. So far, no evidence of foul play has been discovered in the investigation. Nothing at Gary's apartment suggests that he intended to be away from home for any extended period of time, and there's no evidence of any communications about plans for a trip or move. But it's possible that Gary could have met someone and discussed these plans in person. Extensive searches of the Larne area have turned up no clues as to what happened to the missing man. Searches have now turned to nearby waterways. Gary's family has been funding the searches themselves and have set up a GoFundMe page to help raise money for them. Anyone with information can contact 101, referencing number 530 of 20/12/24. Over a year has passed since Kaysey Yoder vanished from her home in Weld County, Colorado. Dozens of tips were sent to law enforcement, but little new information has been uncovered in this strange disappearance. Kaysey was 34 years old at the time of her disappearance in January of 2024. She lived with her partner Evan and 4 sons in a small community a few miles east of Eaton, Colorado. She was incredibly dedicated to her children, especially her oldest son, who was born with a disability. Kaysey was working towards getting a license so that she could be classed as his formal caregiver and receive money to support them. She only had one more test to take. In the months leading up to her disappearance, Kaysey had been in a good mood. It had gotten to the point where she felt ready to stop taking medication for bipolar disorder. But the day before she vanished, Kaysey was acting strangely. She sent a message to her friend saying she wanted to lie down in the snow in one of the irrigation ditches and not get back up. But the following day, January 14th, Kaysey seemed to be back to normal. That morning, she spoke with her mother on the phone. She and her mother were very close and would talk on the phone most days. Her mother didn't notice anything out of the ordinary about the call. When the call finished, she even thought about calling back later on to continue their chat. At about 4 p.m., Kaysey left her home on Abbey Road. She told her partner she was going to stay with a friend for the night and packed a change of clothes into a backpack that she often used as a purse. Kaysey had the keys to 2 of the family's vehicles with her, but she left the house on foot. Even though Kaysey left on foot in harsh weather conditions, Evan wasn't worried about her. She was very close with the friends she was supposedly visiting, and the trip didn't strike him as unusual. It wasn't until the following day that he tried to contact her and didn't get any response. Kaysey's mother contacted the friend who she was supposedly staying with, only for the friend to reveal she hadn't seen Kaysey at all that day or the day before. Evan reported Kaysey as a missing person that same day. Early reports stated that Kaysey was spotted at a store in Alt sometime between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. on the day of her disappearance. But this detail wouldn't be included in later reports on the strange disappearance. The backpack Kaysey had taken with her was located not far from her home. The change of pants and her son's cell phone were found inside the bag. Kaysey's own phone was still missing. The phone could be a key clue to solving this missing person case. Investigators have partial call and text records, but location data is missing. As the case isn't linked to any crime, the police haven't been able to access this data. This data could reveal what direction Kaysey went in, and whether or not she got into a vehicle after vanishing. The police don't believe foul play was involved with Kaysey leaving her home on the day of her disappearance. But her family and friends can't believe that Kaysey would willingly stay away from her children for an extended period of time. They believe that someone knows what happened to her. Kaysey's family have also been targeted by scammers claiming to be the missing woman and asking for money to come home. The police have received around 50 tips in this case, but unfortunately none have led to any new information about Kaysey's location. Anyone with information on the case can contact the Weld County Sheriff's Office at 970-356-4015. Darrel Johnson Sr. was out celebrating a birthday with a large group at a campsite in New Mexico when he vanished. 6 months have passed and no trace of the missing man has been found. Darrel was last seen in the early morning hours of June 29, 2024. The day before, he had traveled from his home in Phoenix, Arizona to Concha State Park in New Mexico. Darrel had visited New Mexico before, but never Conchas Lake. According to his family, he'd never been anywhere so rural and cut off. The area was very remote, and it would be difficult to get anywhere without a vehicle. Darrel was brought on the trip by a close friend who he lived with and her family. It was to celebrate a birthday, and more than 30 people would be in attendance. Darrel had a tent of his own, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary when the group said goodnight to him at roughly 11 p.m. and zipped up his tent. About 90 minutes later, Darrel was spotted again. He went to a neighboring tent to ask for a flashlight. The witness reported watching Darrel walk south along the shoreline before he turned back north to head to his own campsite. According to the witness, he seemed as if he was drunk or under the influence of something. This struck Darrel's family as strange. He didn't drink or take any substances, so they could think of no reason why he would be acting like this. The following morning, the other campers woke to find Darrel missing. All his belongings were still in his tent, with the exception of his cell phone, which was also missing. It was around 9 a.m. when park staff were informed of Darrel's disappearance. The other campers could think of no reason why he might have gone off on his own and had no idea where he might have gone. The park staff began their search, and soon the New Mexico authorities were also alerted to the disappearance. Even though Darrel was 67 years old at the time of his disappearance, a silver alert wasn't issued. Darrel was believed to be of sound mind and wouldn't qualify for the alert. A helicopter also wasn't utilized in the initial search, but drones were flown over the area to find any trace of the missing man. One of the strangest clues to come from the search was Darrel's cell phone. It was still missing, but investigators were able to access data and records that they hope might point them in the right direction. The last ping from the phone hit the cell tower closest to the campsite, suggesting it hadn't moved very far. However, data showed that someone had used it to access the internet multiple times after Darrel was last seen. This included a cluster of uses at around 11:40 a.m. on June 30th. Darrel's family drove over to New Mexico and spent almost a week and a half searching the park themselves for any clues that they might have missed, but no physical traces of Darrel have ever been found. Since then, they've continued to appeal for information and pushed for more to be done to try to locate Darrel. According to the police, there's no foul play in this disappearance, but Darrel's family cannot come up with a reason why he might have wandered off. Anyone with information can contact the NMSP dispatch at 505-425-6771. Aziz Ziriat and his friend Samuel Harris started 2025 on the slopes of the Dolomite Mountains. They were supposed to return home to the UK a few days later on January 6th, but the two men missed their flight. A search uncovered Samuel's remains, but over a month later, Aziz remained a missing person. Aziz and Samuel grew up together, both attending school in southwest London. They attended different universities, but remained good friends as adults. They both enjoyed hiking and had gone on many hikes over the years. Normally, this was part of a larger group. Their trip to Italy at the end of 2024 would be just the two of them. The hike started like any other. They spent a few days hiking through a valley in the Dolomites until they reached a hut near Lake Garda. Throughout the hike, the men had been keeping in contact with family and friends back home. The last communication came on New Year's Day. Aziz sent photos to his girlfriend and told her that his phone was almost out of battery. Both Aziz and Samuel also sent photos and messages to other friends, but at some point that afternoon, the texts stopped coming. At first, their families weren't worried. Going a short while without hearing from them wasn't anything out of the ordinary, especially considering Aziz had warned his girlfriend about the battery life. It was only when neither Aziz nor Samuel boarded their flight home on January 6th that their families knew something was wrong. They contacted authorities in Italy the same day and flew down to help search for their missing loved ones. The photos and videos sent to family members became crucial for search teams trying to narrow down the last known location of the two men. On New Year's Day, Aziz had recorded a short video. He showed off the snow-covered slopes on the mountain and the shelter where they'd be staying. He also explained that the men were planning to leave their larger packs at the shelter that day and explore the valley with only minimal supplies. The plan had been to then move on to the next valley the following day. Aziz's family was also able to gain access to the missing person's email account. That provided additional information about where they intended to hike. It also showed that there hadn't been any activity since January 1st. The initial search was hindered by snow and fog, which meant helicopters couldn't join the drones and ground-based search teams. But when the snow cleared, more resources were put into trying to solve this missing person case. Only a few days later, the search teams made a devastating discovery. Samuel's body was found beneath the snow. Early reports suggest that he may have fallen from a height. Not far away, search teams found items belonging to Aziz. These included his phone case and a card, but Aziz himself was nowhere to be found. After this discovery, Aziz's family braced themselves for the worst. It seemed likely that Aziz wouldn't be too far away from his friend, but since Samuel was discovered, no new updates in the missing person case have been shared. Aziz remains missing, and his family don't have an explanation as to what happened to him. Search and rescue teams remarked that it was unusual for anyone to go missing in the Dolomites at this time of year, but that may simply be because fewer people are likely to hike in the mountains in the winter. As more people take to the slopes of the mountain in the coming months, there is hope that this missing person case can be solved. Austrian herders were used to stopping by the hut of Bodo Hell for some homemade goat's cheese and pumpkin seed oil. But when a friend went to visit Bodo in early August of 2024, he was nowhere to be seen. A massive search operation got underway, but no trace of Bodo was ever found. Bodo Hell was 81 years old at the time of his disappearance. Most people who'd heard of Bodo knew him from his recent writing success. In 2023, he was awarded the Austrian State Prize for Literature. Shortly before he vanished, he earned the Styrian Literature Prize. Bodo's writing has been praised for its poetic nature, wit, and irony. The writer was said to have had an encyclopedic knowledge on the subjects he wrote about, and managed to craft stories where that knowledge came through, but they were still engaging. When a friend went to visit Bodo on August 11th of 2024, he expected to find Bodo working on his latest piece, or busying himself with some of the other duties he had in his rustic hut in the Austrian mountains, but Bodo was nowhere to be found. It soon emerged that nobody had seen Bodo since August 9th. The last people to have spoken to Bodo were neighbors who said he'd gone to look for his cows, which were out grazing in the mountains. The same day, an acquaintance had tried to call Bodo on his hut phone but got no response. A search effort soon started. The area was difficult to navigate, with plenty of treacherous areas where Bodo may have gotten into trouble. He'd been spending his summers in the region for around 50 years and would have been aware of the dangers he'd face while out in the mountains. But even if he knew the risks, that doesn't necessarily mean Bodo hadn't fallen into difficulties. Sinkholes and steep drops are among the hazards he may have faced while trying to locate his animals. Even something as simple as losing his footing on the uneven terrain could have made it impossible for Bodo to get home without help. Mountain search and rescue teams were brought in to try to locate the missing rider, but this was an extremely large region, with pine forests and uneven terrain making it even more difficult to search. Drones, helicopters, and search dogs were utilized, but no clues could be found. The initial search had to be called off after just a few days, as thunderstorms reached the region. Smaller searches followed, but there was no new information in this missing person case. After a month, Bodo was officially declared a missing person, but there have been no updates since, and he remains missing to this day. Cameron Twiss was reported missing after he failed to return to his hostel after a hiking trip in Albania. Extensive searches quickly got underway, but Cameron still has not been found. Cameron was an avid hiker who enjoyed exploring different parts of the world. He traveled to Albania from Australia and seemed to be enjoying his time in the country. One of the last messages he sent to his friends back home was about making homemade alcohol with a local man. He was the sort of person to make friends with locals and fellow tourists alike when he went abroad, and this latest trip seemed like no exception. His plan for October 13th of 2024 was to travel along a popular hiking trail in northern Albania. He was staying in a hostel in Shkodër and planned on walking along a trail connecting Valbona to the village of Tef. The journey would take roughly 10 hours and pass through remote passes in the Albanian Alps. For some parts of the journey, there are no roads, but the hike isn't considered particularly difficult. Tour guides remarked that they've been on the hike with elderly and infirm people. Cameron was physically fit and an avid hiker and should have no problems with the trail. He started the journey traveling with another group of tourists, but there came a split in the road. He split off from the group who were heading to a different destination. This was at around 8 a.m. and was the last time he was ever seen. When Cameron didn't return to the hostel, the authorities were called and he was reported missing. He'd left behind most of his belongings, including his passport. Calls and texts stopped going through to his phone, and his family back home in Australia realized something was wrong. Even though the trail was considered safe, there were parts where people could get in trouble if they weren't careful. The initial search focused on an area where tourists like to stop to take photos for social media. 2 tourists had slipped and fallen in the area before, and there was a fear that Cameron may have been another victim. The search gradually expanded from there, but there was still no sign of Cameron. Search teams remarked that even if they couldn't see Cameron himself, they likely would have been alerted to the presence of a body by birds, but there were no such signs. This left investigators at a loss as to what might have happened to him. Crimes against tourists on these trails are extremely uncommon. The area is considered safe, and there was no evidence that Cameron had met with foul play. but there was little evidence for any other explanation either. Some suggested that Cameron may have become the victim of a bear attack. These are also extremely rare. There aren't many wild bears left in Albania, and they're unlikely to attack people. Even if this was the cause of Cameron's disappearance, though, investigators believe they would have found some kind of evidence of the attack along the trail. And more than 4 months on, the mystery remains unsolved. Cindy Gausline went missing under extremely strange circumstances in September of 2024. She left behind 3 children who spent the last 5 months wondering where their mother is. Cindy lived in an apartment in southeast San Antonio, and it had been a difficult year for the 31-year-old. During the summer, she was hit by a truck, which eventually led to her losing her job. But none of Cindy's family or friends reported any unusual or erratic behavior in the period leading up to her disappearance. On the day she vanished, she seemed to be in good spirits. It was the afternoon of September 15th when Cindy left her home for the final time. She was dressed in a black dress and high-top sneakers and was laughing and smiling as she left. Cindy told her daughter that she'd be home in a few hours, or by the morning at the latest. A few hours later, her daughter received a voice call on the Facebook Messenger app. It was her mother. Cindy said that something was going on and she needed to tell her daughter something. According to her family, Cindy sounded scared. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to say much more before the call disconnected, and Cindy wouldn't return home. As her family began the search to bring her home, they reflected on how strange the final trip was. Cindy didn't drive and left on foot the night she was last seen. Her friends and family have no idea who she was with or where she intended to go. This was extremely out of character. Her brother told news outlets that Cindy always let a family friend or family member know where she was, making this trip extremely unusual. Cindy had left all of her belongings at home on the night that she vanished, and that included her mobile phone. When she made the call through Facebook Messenger, it had come from another person's cell phone, but her family had no idea whose phone she was using. Without knowing where Cindy intended to go on the night of her disappearance, even starting the search for her has been difficult. In the early days of the investigation into her missing person case, the family shared flyers around the apartment complex where she lived. Unfortunately, that turned up no tips or new leads. There was little progress in Cindy's case. It really seemed as if she'd vanished into thin air. The police classified Cindy as an endangered missing person but didn't go into detail about why the case had that classification. Since then, there have been no significant updates in the investigation, and Cindy's family have just as many questions as they did when their daughter received that strange phone call. Friends and family have continued to appeal for information and believe that someone knows what happened to her, and anyone with information on this case can contact the San Antonio Police Department's Missing Person Unit at 210-207-7660. Danae Stewart last saw her daughter, Queen Destiny Taylor, as she left for work on August 14th of 2024. She would never return home, and the unusual circumstances of her disappearance have left her family fearing she may have met with foul play. The day of Destiny's disappearance started like any other. She lived with her mother and 2 sons in Gainesville, Virginia. In the past, Destiny had struggled with mental health problems, but her mother believed she was in a good place at the time. She'd recently started working at the Buffalo Wild Wings in Gainesville and took an Uber to her morning shift. Destiny didn't come home after her shift, but her mother wasn't immediately worried. At about 9:30 p.m., Danae received a call from her daughter. She explained that she'd gone out with friends, but she was on her way home. It was after this point that things began to get strange. Another call came in 30 minutes later. There'd been a car accident, and Destiny was now stranded. She asked to be picked up from the Manassas Mall. It was a location about 20 minutes from Gainesville. Danae was obviously worried, but Destiny didn't seem to be hurt. She sent Destiny's brother to go pick her up. While he was on the way, Danae received a third phone call, and it was Destiny again, but she was now calling from an unknown number. She explained that she and her friend had taken an Uber to her friend's aunt's house. She'd lost her phone and thought that it might have been left in the Uber. For some reason, though, she was going to search the house for it in case she'd misplaced it after she'd arrived. It didn't take Destiny's brother long to arrive, but by now it was around 11 p.m. He called his mother so she could let Destiny know her ride was there. He also told her that he thought the location seemed dangerous, and he didn't want to stay there too long with his girlfriend and children in the car. Danae told her daughter how her brother felt, but Destiny was still searching for the phone. By the time she left the house at around midnight, her brother had gone. Danae sent her daughter money for an Uber, but said she had to sort out the journey herself. The next morning, Destiny still hadn't arrived, but her twin sister, Diamond, had received a strange message on Instagram. It wasn't from Destiny's account, but seemed to be from her. She said she wasn't coming home, but she was going to get better. The search for Destiny began right away. Her family didn't immediately report her missing, but started their own search to try to find her. They contacted the people she'd been with on the night of her disappearance, but couldn't get any answers as to what happened to her. Eventually, a missing person report was filed, and the police began their investigation. Since then, there have been a few more strange incidents. In October, police in Prince George's County, Maryland, stopped a car doing a routine traffic stop. In the passenger seat was a woman resembling Destiny, but officers didn't realize she was a missing person. Nothing about the sighting struck the officers as odd, and the car was let go. Then, in December, Danae received a call from someone who sounded like Destiny. She was talking quietly and asked Danae to tell her sons she loved him. She then said she had to go and hung up. The police have found no evidence of foul play in this case, but her family believes something is keeping Destiny away. A private investigator has been hired to try to get to the bottom of the mystery, and a GoFundMe was set up to support the investigation. Anyone with information on this case can contact the Prince William County Police Department at 703-792-6500. Clinton Bonell was just starting a new stage in his life when he suddenly vanished. The former Green Beret was reported missing after failing to show up for classes. His family believes his disappearance is suspicious. Clinton had been in the military for 2 decades when he retired in 2024. He'd worked as a medic with the Green Berets and wanted to continue his work in medicine as a civilian. According to his sister, he wasn't the sort of veteran who was lost after leaving the military. He knew exactly what he wanted to do and was working to achieve his goals. The 50-year-old had earned a spot on a physician assistance course at Methodist University in Fayette, North Carolina, not far from where he had been stationed. He was enjoying his time on the course and quickly made friends. Clinton was made the president of his cohort. January of 2025 was an exam period for the course, and Clinton had been hard at work studying for his exams and labs. On the afternoon of January 27th, Clinton went to work at the Fit for Life gym near his university. After leaving the gym, it's believed Clinton went to the university to study until around 7 p.m. He then drove to his home on Butler Nursery Road, about 30 minutes away. The last known contact with Clinton was a text message to a friend. In the message, he let his friend know that he'd just arrived home. What happened after that is a mystery. The physician's assistance course at Methodist University took absences very seriously. Having multiple absences without letting anyone know why could result in getting kicked out of the program. The fact that this was exam season meant absences were even more notable. So when Clinton failed to show up for classes 2 days in a row, the university was concerned. This was very out of character for Clinton. According to his family and friends, being absent without telling anybody was something he would never do. The university asked for a welfare check and went to visit Clinton's home. His car was parked outside the house, but Clinton was nowhere to be seen. The police visited his home 4 times, but there was no sign of Clinton. Clinton's wife contacted his sister, asking if she had heard from him and updating the rest of the family on the situation. Almost a month on from Clinton's disappearance, there's been little update on the case. Clinton's family can think of no reason why he would want to disappear. He has a daughter, and his sister doesn't believe he would do anything to hurt her or abandon her. She can't imagine Clinton intentionally disappearing. According to his family, Clinton can physically look after himself. His military training meant he could defend himself against an attacker, but this fact just made them feel even more suspicious that something bad had happened. Clinton disappeared at some point after arriving at his home. The location where he vanished is relatively rural. His house is in a wooded area and isn't far from Rockfish Creek. If Clinton decided to go for a jog to end his day, it's possible he ran into trouble while out in this rural area and simply hasn't been found yet. The police continue to appeal for information in this case. Anyone with information can contact the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office, Detective Sergeant J. McLeod, at 910-677-5548. Originally from Queens, New York, Michelle Rose Bernstein Schultz was born in September of 1985. At the age of 7, she moved with her family to Gilbert, Arizona, where she was raised. In 2021, well into her adulthood, Michelle headed for Phoenix with her boyfriend, who she'd been with for a year and a half. The pair were living at the Tides at Paradise Valley, a complex found on North 40th Street and East Greenway Road. At the time, the 36-year-old had 2 children, each of whom lived with their fathers. Michelle had been divorced twice, with both marriages producing a son. The mother of 2 was also an avid hiker and was known to take the hobby quite seriously. She would take her dog, Ava, with her everywhere, including on these adventurous hikes. As far as she was concerned, Michelle's life was pretty normal, and things were going well until June of 2022. She'd been involved in a rear-end vehicle collision and was waiting to hear from her personal injury lawyer. On the 28th of June, she would hear from the Phillips law firm stating that her check would be ready for collection on the 1st of July. A $2,500 settlement was awaiting her. The following day, Michelle would spend her day at home and text back and forth with a friend. At 4:03 that afternoon, she sent her last message to that friend. After that, Michelle hasn't been seen or heard from again. Just one day later, her boyfriend headed to the Phoenix Police Department and reported that his girlfriend was missing. He claimed that he couldn't find her anywhere. The boyfriend explained that on the 29th, the day Michelle remained at home, she wasn't feeling well. He returned from work assuming that she was upstairs in bed, and he went to lie on the living room couch. He didn't want to disturb her, but the next morning, after having not seen her since the day before, he headed to the bedroom. To his surprise, Michelle wasn't there. He searched the rest of the house but found no signs of his girlfriend, but all of her belongings were there, including her phone, keys, credit card, cash, and driver's license. Michelle also left Ava behind, her trusty dog that accompanied her everywhere. Her car was also still in the parking lot of the apartment complex. After investigating the case, authorities found that the woman had vanished with a pair of gray hiking sandals, a blue backpack, and a bedazzled hat with bumblebees on it. They believed that she walked out of the second-floor apartment sometime after her last text was sent. Despite search efforts, police found no evidence leading to the whereabouts of Michelle Bernstein Schultz. No means or motive for foul play came about either. Information on the whereabouts of this person can be directed to the Phoenix Police Department at 602-262-6151. Eric McFaden was born on the 1st of March in 1991 and graduated from Joppatown High School in Harford County, Maryland. From 2009 to 2011, he attended Lincoln University of Pennsylvania and later lived in Charlottesville with his girlfriend, Esther Ivini. In November of 2012, the 21-year-old Eric vanished from Charlottesville, sparking a lengthy mystery. Eric's case, though, appears to be linked to a different disappearance. It was that of Dashad Sage Smith. Sage went missing just 3 days before Eric, and it appeared that the two knew each other. In fact, they'd planned on meeting up, according to phone records. Sage had last been seen around the 500 block of West Main Street at 6:30 p.m. on the 20th of November. The case is being treated like a homicide. Eric and Sage had been exchanging texts and calls just weeks before both disappearances took place. They'd even met in person and were well acquainted. As investigations into both cases were underway, Esther would claim that her boyfriend told her that Sage was blackmailing him. This allegation, though, could never be confirmed. At the time of his disappearance, Eric was working at a Sherwin-Williams paint store, but hadn't been to work for several days, with no warning and no explanation. After having been last seen on the 23rd of November, Esther reported her boyfriend missing to the Charlottesville Police Department, who found the connection to the missing woman, Sage. Eric was staying at Esther's apartment, who'd been out of town for Thanksgiving. A search of this apartment uncovered an alleged receipt from CVs that dated back to the evening of the 22nd of November. On the day that Esther reported Eric missing, she received a call and emails from him, claiming that he was in Washington, D.C. and asking for money. It was then that Esther informed him that the police wanted to speak with him regarding Sage's disappearance. Unexpectedly, Eric made contact with the police and explained that he and Sage had planned on meeting, but that meeting never took place. He didn't know where Sage was and hung up on the investigators when they tried to ask him to return to Charlottesville. The phone calls confirmed that the man was alive and well. Esther later contacted police, stating that Eric was taking a bus back to Charlottesville, but the following day he decided against this. Still, police wanted to interview him face to face, believing that he may have some information that could aid them in the disappearance of Sage. But after changing his mind about returning to the area, any word from Eric ceased, and he hasn't been seen or heard from again. 6 years went by with still no sign of the man, and Sage's case has still not been solved. The McFaden family reported him missing again on the 26th of June 2019. This came after Eric's mother discovered that no missing person file had been opened on her son. It's believed that Eric may still be alive and could have traveled to several different cities, including Joppa, Lake City, South Carolina, Rochester, New York, and even Atlanta. Detectives continue to believe that he may have some vital information about Sage after he claimed that she had a lot of enemies. Information on his disappearance can be directed to the Charlottesville Police Department at 434-970-3280. Have you seen Richard Allbright? He was raised in South Africa by Southern Baptist missionary parents and attended college in Kentucky, receiving a journalism and a nursing degree. He would later go on to meet his wife, Kathy, who was working as a business editor at the Amarillo Globe newspaper in Texas. After marrying her, the couple moved from Texas to New York, where Richard obtained a nursing job at the hospital for special surgery. He worked here for 16 years. The couple remained together and lived in a house close to Junction Boulevard and 34th Avenue in Jackson Heights. In 2021, Richard was on medication to thin his blood after 3 open-heart surgeries and antibiotics following 2 knee replacements. It was also this year that a lasting mystery would surface. It was the disappearance of 69-year-old Richard Allbright. On the 14th of October, he was last spotted leaving his residence in Jackson Heights. Surveillance footage captured him leaving the building to embark on a walk. This was at 11:18 that morning. The camera also captured Richard making a left turn, heading toward Northern Boulevard. He wore slippers out on this venture since his regular shoes had been hurting him, and he could be seen walking with a slight limp. Oddly, Richard never made it home, and he hasn't been seen or heard from since. He also left behind his crucial daily medication with the intention of returning. On the day that Richard enigmatically disappeared, he received a text from his wife, but all phone calls would go straight to voicemail. Kathy later decided to hire a private investigator when there was still no sign of her beloved husband. The investigator discovered that the missing man had taken a bus that day and later purchased a 30-day Metro card. But since then, all activity on his debit and credit cards have ceased. Richard's computer was also searched, and the investigator discovered that he was interested in a museum located in Flushing. Kathy would also phone 61 hospitals in New York City in search of her husband, but none of them had received any John Does. After this, though, the case goes cold, and no further clues as to the potential whereabouts ever surfaced. To this day, the disappearance of Richard Allbright remains unsolved, and the circumstances surrounding it are unclear. Any information can be directed to the New York City Missing Persons Squad at 212-694-7781. Joey Lynn Offett was born on the 11th of October 1973 in Virginia. She had 3 older sisters, and her parents separated when she was young. Joey attended Shepherd University in West Virginia, earning a major in journalism, but the following year she dropped out of university after suffering from poor grades. In adulthood, she would also struggle to hold down jobs and seemed to have issues maintaining long-term relationships. Despite these minor setbacks, Joey got married in 1994 and moved to Texas. By this time, she had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. Unfortunately, the marriage ended, and Joey found herself in an on and off partnership with a man named Alex Brolin Jr., who was the father of the 2 youngest children. In early 2007, Joey relocated again, this time to Sykesville, Pennsylvania, where she lived with her 3 children in a home purchased by her mother. At some point that year, the oldest of the daughters went to live with her grandmother in Warrenton, Virginia, while the youngest was sent to the father in Clearfield, Pennsylvania. Joey was in the process of recovering from a particularly difficult pregnancy when a strange event struck. The events began on the 3rd of July in 2007, when the father of the children came to visit her and help her with grocery shopping. He also did some additional work around the house. That day, the two allegedly argued, prompting him to leave, but during the next 2 days, his phone calls to Joey would go unanswered. When he arrived at the home again, no one came to the door. On the 6th of July, a home health care nurse arrived at the house to make her routine appointment with Joey. Again, the door went unanswered. A second appointment was scheduled for the 11th of July, but Joey missed that too. Tragedy struck the following day when the residents in the 90 block of Fugate Drive erupted into flames at 4 in the morning. After extinguishing the flames, firefighters only discovered one individual, and this person wasn't Joey. The 33-year-old mother was gone. Investigators were called to the scene and found that the woman was missing along with her car, a 1994 red Saturn with the license plate number JXN8871. Days later, on the 16th of July, the vehicle was finally located. It was found in a parking lot in State College, Pennsylvania. This was near Joey's former home, which she shared with Alexis. Adding further complexities to the case was that there was no indication that the woman had recently driven the vehicle, and no one at the complex reported seeing her. The car also had been neatly backed into the parking lot, but the family stated that Joey wasn't the best driver and believed that it wasn't her that parked it. Mixed among the house rubble was a purse belonging to the missing woman, which held her identification. The house keys, though, were missing. Oddly, raw hamburger meat was discovered on the kitchen counter, and it suggested that Joey was still around on the 3rd or 5th of July. Friends and family claimed that Joey would never leave her children behind, nor would she voluntarily disappear. To this day, no one knows what happened to the missing mother or why. The house fire, believed to be intentional, was left unsolved too. No suspects or person of interest were found in this case. Any tips on this disappearance can be directed to 1-877-440-5639. Please help find Curtis Aalog. This is the title of a public Facebook group dedicated to finding the missing Native American Curtis Brian Aalog. There are very few leads regarding this case, leaving it widely unsolved to this day. The enduring mystery began on the 13th of December in 2019. Curtis had been visiting a patient at the Kanakanak Hospital in Dillingham, Alaska. This would be the last place that he was seen. According to reports, 2 days later, he was alleged to have stayed over at his grandfather's house for the evening, only to be reported missing on the 16th of December. Friends and family have sparked search parties ever since the disappearance. They've organized several searches, with volunteers scouring creeks and beaches in the places where he was last seen. Volunteers also looked into every possible location they could think of, but Curtis was gone. The circumstances regarding the disappearance remain unclear, and the police only know very few details. To this day, the case remains unsolved, and Curtis is classified as missing. The Facebook group was established the following month when no sign of the missing man surfaced. Family and friends posted information about Curtis, as well as information on the search efforts. The latest post came about in 2023 with no new updates. Several pictures of the missing man circulate the group as loved ones continue to search for answers. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Curtis, you're encouraged to make contact with the Dillingham Police Department at 907-842-5354. Christian Michael Hughes, a California resident, was born on the 24th of September in 1992 to Kim Napote. At the age of 20, Christian was living in San Diego and working at a local Taco Bell. As far as family was concerned, the young man was coping as well as he could with the passing of his father. No one was prepared for the enduring mystery that would come after that, though. It was the 4th of February in 2013 when Kim dropped her son off at the San Diego International Airport. He'd be taking a flight to visit friends in San Francisco. As he arrived in the area, Christian contacted his mother and told her that he'd be returning 3 days later, confirming a pickup time of 2:30 that afternoon. A day after arriving in San Francisco, the 20-year-old headed to his aunt and was given $70 in cash. On the 6th of February, Christian went out for lunch with a female friend. He would later head to his other friend's house, located in the 900 block of Capitol Avenue in San Diego. At 12:30 a.m., Christian was last seen by the residents. The following morning, the friends awoke around 10 a.m., but found that the young man was gone. It was alleged that in the middle of the night, he'd packed all of his things and left the house. Unfortunately, he never returned home, and Christian hasn't been heard from since. He never notified any of his friends before leaving their home. They were the ones who were planning on driving him to the airport the following day. With still no sign of the man, a missing person report was filed with the San Francisco Police Department, prompting an immediate investigation. It was discovered that on the 7th of February, the day he was supposed to go home, Christian had sent his last text message at 1:38 that morning. He didn't make it to the Virgin American Airline flight. Police could find no clues that would lead them to his whereabouts either. It wasn't until the 17th of April the following year that they would receive their first lead on the missing man, who'd now been gone for over a year. It was an alleged unconfirmed sighting from Haight Street in San Francisco. The witness claimed to have seen a man with long curly hair and visible arm tattoos. He was said to be walking with a blonde-haired woman. It's uncertain if this lead was followed up on, and no new reports or sightings ever came about. To this day, Christian Hughes remains missing. Unfortunately, he makes up one of the missing California Five, along with Sean Seedy, Sean Dickerson, Jackson Miller, and Cameron Rimmer. Each of the men were young and were last seen in San Francisco between 2010 and 2013. No one knows what happened to any of them. Any information can be directed to the San Francisco Police Department at 415-553-1071. Leia Rochelle Peebles came into existence on the 16th of January in 1983 in Fort Worth, Texas, to parents Sharon and John Peebles. She grew up with two brothers in a middle-class home and would attend the Carter Riverside High School, becoming an honor student. At the school, Leia would find herself a member of the drama club, an active cheerleader, and a staff member working on the yearbook. Unfortunately, during her sophomore year, Leia's life began to take a twisted turn. She found herself dropping out of many of her extracurriculars and would later be sent to a treatment program for women. But after this, things started to look up again, and she left school with a cosmetology license and began working at a beauty salon. Unfortunately, a relapse would again send her spiraling. She was fired from the beauty salon and decided to move to Albuquerque in May of 2006. Leia would be getting her life back on track again and started working at the Flying Star Cafe, located at 8001 Menaul Boulevard Northeast, a restaurant popular with courthouse employees and police. Things were looking up once more, but this would not be long-lasting. Just days later, on the 22nd of May, Leia left her friend's house around 8 that evening. She was heading out on a dinner date that she'd met at the popular eatery where she worked. Later that night, when her date had finished up, Leia dropped her car off at a transmission shop. Earlier, a slight traffic accident left the vehicle damaged. This was the last time that anyone would see Leia, though. She never returned to her friend's home, and she was never heard from again. The silver 2000 Volkswagen Beetle sedan was still at the shop, and several weeks later it was reported abandoned. No clues as to her whereabouts surfaced, and despite search efforts, Leia remained missing. Unexpectedly, a strange tip would come in, referring to a woman called Mia. She was working as a lady of the night for a man named AJ. When police investigated this potential lead, they found no evidence linking AJ to Leia's disappearance, and in fact, he hadn't even heard of her. The authorities also found no evidence of foul play in the disappearance, allowing the case to grow cold. Over the next few years, Leia's father would regularly travel to Texas, New Mexico, Nevada, Colorado, and Arizona, hoping to find his daughter in one of these places. In 2013, he was in a fatal motorcycle collision and passed away, never knowing what may have happened to her. The circumstances surrounding the disappearance of Leia remain unclear, and her case is still unsolved to this day. Information about this missing person can be directed to the Albuquerque Police Department at 505-242-2677. What happened to Adrien Lucas? This is the question that still haunts the communities of Austria. Adrien immigrated with his parents, Richard and Eva, to Gorlitz, Saxony from Poland back in the 90s. He grew up with 2 sisters and was described as quite the family man. As he entered his 30s, the trained masseur struggled to find work. In 2017, though, he would get his big break when his father told him of a job opening as a construction worker. The job, though, was in St. Anton, 700 kilometers away from where he was living. Adrien found himself at odds, not knowing whether or not he should accept the construction job. But due to his poor financial state at the time, he decided it would be best. The job would pay 20 euros an hour, and the hotel Adrien would be staying in was fully paid for. The time for the new job rolled around, and on the 20th of September, the 34-year-old arrived in St. Anton. He checked into the hotel, which stood 350 meters away from the construction area that he would be working on. Richard and Ava explained that they maintained constant contact with him. On the second day of being in the new area, Adrien was celebrating his 35th birthday. The following evening, while at a local bar, Richard would call his son, and he went outside to hear him better and escape the loud music. Adrien told his father he'd met a Hungarian woman who was working as a receptionist at the hotel where he was staying. She was with him at the bar that evening. When asked about the work and if everything was going well there, Adrien revealed that he didn't feel safe. He also disclosed that 3 men were working with him, but they spoke ill of him. They also allegedly wanted to take him to a different construction zone the following Monday. Richard asked his son if he'd spoken to the boss about it, but he hadn't. After this, the conversation ended with the idea that Adrien would be talking to the boss about the safety concerns and the Monday job. The day came around and he still hadn't brought up the conversation of the concerns he was having. At around 1 p.m., a few of the workers began asking him if he felt okay, claiming that he looked ill. Adrien was ill and was beginning to complain of a stomachache. He was advised to go back to the hotel room for rest, but instead he went to one of the on-site bathrooms and attempted to call one of his sisters and Richard, but neither of them answered. When the sister finally looked at her phone, she found that a voicemail had been left. It was Adrien, and he was voicing concerns over the workers who he believed wanted to end his life. He asked his sister to tell their father since he was unable to reach him. Adrien remained in the porta potty for 45 more minutes and sent a cryptic text to his father, saying that he was uncertain if he would survive the day. Adrien was later seen leaving the construction zone, and that was the last that anyone would hear from him. That evening, the boss headed to the hotel and knocked on the door but found no response. He thought that the worker was likely asleep, given the stomachache that he'd complained of earlier that day. The next morning, Richard saw the messages that his frightened son had left and contacted the boss, who was also a friend of his. The boss tells him of the stomachache and that he also found Adrien's jacket with the hotel key inside left at the construction site. He attempted the hotel room again, but there was still no response. The receptionist came to open the door, but Adrien was nowhere to be seen. The bed was untouched, which meant that the man hadn't been there for at least 2 days. Neither of his 2 phones was in the room either, but all of his other personal belongings were left behind. Richard and Ava made their way to St. Anton in an effort to search for their son, but no one in the small town could give them any information on the missing man. When Richard spoke with one of the workers, he told him that no Hungarian receptionist was working at the hotel, only an Austrian woman. Police soon got word of the disappearance, and search efforts began. They found that both phones had last pinged at 2 p.m. that day. A search dog also led authorities to a bus stop in town, but couldn't take them any further. The bus stop would take passengers to a nearby train station, which would then take them to Zurich. No one knows, though, if Adrien took this route. A few days later, a large-scale search effort in the surrounding area started. Hotel staff were questioned, and all the rooms were searched, but still there was no information about the missing man. Adrien Lucas was last seen on the 25th of September 2017. No one knows where he is or if he's still alive. Many questions remain unanswered. Who was the Hungarian receptionist and the 3 men that Adrien was afraid of? Why was he erratic, and does his boss know more than he's letting on? Information on this individual can be directed to 049-611-551-3101. It was the 28th of June, 1980, when a harrowing experience unfolded in the 200 block of Tanglewood Court in Nashville, Tennessee. On this block were the Tanglewood Apartments, now known as Whispering Oaks, the residence of 21-year-old Jennifer Lynn Wyatt. She just returned home from a softball team pool party alone. This was the last place that she was known to be before disappearing, leaving many unanswered questions in her wake. Not much is known about Jennifer, her past life, or the areas that she was known to frequent. Loved ones, though, claimed that her life was going well at the time. She'd recently bought a car and was working at the Colonial Bakery, all while attending night school. The only confirmed fact about Jennifer was that she was gone and had been for the last 40 years. The family would only be alerted to her disappearance 2 days later when they discovered that she failed to show up for church and work that Monday. Something was wrong. Jennifer's parents made contact with the police and reported their daughter missing. Police headed to the apartment block where they discovered her vehicle was left in the apartment complex parking lot. The apartment was also undisturbed, but there was no sign of the woman anywhere. Upon questioning neighbors, police would learn of something quite traumatizing. Earlier that day, they heard screaming, and when they peered out of their windows, they'd seen 3 to 4 men forcing a woman into a dark 4-door sedan, which sped off. The neighbors had informed the security guard of the complex, but he failed to report the incident to the police. Authorities believed that the woman seen by the witnesses was in fact Jennifer. With no further leads and no information on the woman, the case grew eerily cold. It wasn't until the 11th of December, nearly 6 months later, that the first hint of Jennifer would surface. It was her Tennessee driver's license that was unexpectedly discovered on Blue Lake Road, now known as Blue Lake Lane, in Rutherford County. The road finds itself near Piercy Priest Lake, more than 15 miles away from the Tanglewood Apartments and 3 miles from Laverne. During the time that the driver's license was found, a housing complex was under development nearby. Police decided to enlist the aid of tracker dogs and brought them in to search the nearby woods. Unfortunately, no trace of Jennifer was ever unearthed there. While it was never confirmed if the kidnapped woman back at Tanglewood was Jennifer, it didn't take police long to suspect that foul play was involved in her disappearance. They believed that the young woman was targeted, but no clues led them to her whereabouts, and she remains missing to this day. Any information can be directed to the Metro Nashville Police Department's Cold Case Unit at 615-862-7329. It was Monday, the 13th of December in 2004, when Stfan Mitchell Adams completed his final exam at Northeastern State University, located in Oklahoma, with hopes of earning his engineering degree and job management. While heading off campus at 11 a.m. in his white truck, Stfan received a call from his girlfriend, who asked him how the exam had gone. It seemed to have gone well. Then he would inform his girlfriend that he was giving an unidentified man a ride to Keys, Oklahoma, and that he would phone her back sometime later. That day, the 26-year-old was planning on visiting his mother in Weber Falls, Oklahoma, but he would never make it there. Stfan was reported missing. During the initial investigation, authorities found that the young man had been in good spirits and was believed to be in South Tahlequah at the time that he spoke to his partner. Half an hour after their call, someone attempted to contact him, but the phone rang only once before going straight to voicemail. Eerily, right after this, all successive calls made to Stfan immediately went to voicemail. Between 11:30 and 12 that day, he was reportedly seen at a convenience store in Cookson, Oklahoma. Witnesses claimed that he appeared to be upset. After purchasing a soda, he headed outside and stood there for 5 minutes. He then left the area in the same white pickup. Witnesses claimed that he was alone at the time. After this, Stfan has never been seen or heard from again. All activity on his credit cards and cell phone has ceased. He left behind most of his personal belongings, including some cash and a dresser. Authorities investigating the enigmatic vanishing would also come to learn of a contentious custody battle. The battle was playing out between the missing man and his ex-wife over their daughter. It was still ongoing at the time that Stfan had disappeared. It was found that he wanted custody of the daughter, but if he couldn't have that, he would at least be able to see her. But the ex-partner was reluctant to allow this and refused to comply with visitation orders. Stfan had been accused of assaulting his daughter twice, but no evidence ever came about that could confirm that this really happened. The custody battle had been ongoing for 2 years, with a hearing at the Muskogee County District Court set for just a few days after Stfan went missing. It's been suggested that the authorities do not believe that this timing was a coincidence at all. Things only got stranger from here. Weeks after he vanished, the family received a phone call from an unidentified person. They were threatening the family, stating that if the search for Stfan didn't end, the family would be directly harmed. The caller was never identified, and the man remains missing. Stfan was living on the 400 block of East Downing Street when he went missing. His pickup truck, a 1995 to 1998 GMC SCI 1-ton, has never been located. The vehicle has an Oklahoma license plate of SEQ 714. Authorities consider the vanishing highly suspicious, with the possibility of foul play. Investigators also found a probable witness in the disappearance who remains unidentified and unquestioned. The witness was described as 5 foot 11 inches tall, with brown collar-length hair and salt and pepper facial hair. Authorities believe that he may have been between the ages of 40 and 50. He wore a tan Carhartt jacket, faded jeans, and a dark green hat. He's known to be driving a charcoal-colored 2000 Ford Ranger pickup, mounted with a chrome toolbox. Police believe that the possible witness arrived at the Dollar General store, located near Stfan's apartment around 8 a.m. For a few hours, he was seen hanging around the parking lot and claimed to be waiting for someone. No one ever met him, though. He also mentioned to a passerby that he worked at a construction site located in Keys, which is where Stfan was heading with the stranger. He left the parking lot just before 11, around the time that the events began to unfold. To this day, he remains unidentified. Stfan Adams has been described as being 5 foot 7 inches tall and weighing around 200 pounds. He was last spotted wearing a black shirt and jeans and was carrying a dark-colored backpack. He was known to have severe asthma and needs an inhaler to control the condition, which shockingly was left at the residence. Any information can be directed to the Tahlequah Police Department at 918-456-8801. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.